Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swirsky's Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swirsky's Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swirsky's Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swirsky Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swirsky Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Blackhawks coming back down to earth a little bit, the Cubs making it to the NLCS, and Bears notching a road win with a rookie quarterback. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the Stars of Tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The season went under... this was the opening weekend of the season. So next home game will be Friday, this coming Friday, the 20th. So head on over to icehogs.com, pick up your hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swirsky Sports sent you. All right, Alex, how you doing, my friend?
Doing pretty well. A lot of things to talk about, I know. High range of emotions here, and ready to get into this.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you want to talk about first? We got positive things across the board for the most part.
Yeah, a little bit of frustrating things too, but yeah, overall very positive. Okay, so I've labeled each subject 1, 2, and 3. Pick a number.
3.
Okay, that is the Cubs.
All right. I think this was probably the one. I don't know. I guess a lot of them could be frustrating, but this was, for me, probably the most frustrating of the topics.
Yeah, I mean, considering what's going on right now, if this was a few days ago, it'd be different, but yeah, you know where this is going.
So we both predicted the Cubs to win against the Nationals in the division series in 5, and that's what happened. They split the series 1-1 in Washington, came back, and ended up splitting in Chicago and then winning again in Washington. But that deciding game was one of the worst baseball games I've ever watched. I don't know how you feel, but it was terrible.
It was torture. It was 5 hours of emotional torture with a lot of just awfulness mixed into it, not only from both teams' play, but from the umpiring and just the broadcasting and the presentation of it. It was a rough one to sit down and watch. I mean, we were all happy in the end in Chicago, but that was a rough one to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, outcome aside, that was terrible to watch, and my heart goes out to Nationals fans because to have to lose in that miserable game is just have to be torture. Like you said, is bullpens that just looked like they had never pitched in a professional game before. Inconsistent strike zones, so many weird calls, having to go to replay. It was just, I mean, it started off like, I don't know, I guess it didn't even start off well because, neither starting pitcher looked great either, as they did their first start in the series.
Yeah, and what was really frustrating on the Cubs end is that first inning, they got that run across on a ground out, but boy, they could have gotten a lot more. They could have jumped and gotten him out of the game in the first inning, but they didn't.
That's been a big problem with the Cubs all season is when they've got somebody on the ropes early, they can't strike fatal blows. They they'll nitpick here and there, but they just never get that fatal strike early where they can just put it away.
Yeah, and there was a lot of good approaches and a lot of bad approaches in that first inning. We saw a good at-bat from John Jay resulting in a hit. We saw a good at-bat from, I think it was Addison Russell and Wilson Contreras. And then you had Chris Bryant swinging at a pitch 2 feet out of the zone that would have been ball 4. You had Jason Hayward taking the first pitch not close, then swinging and hitting a weak grounder to first. There was just a lot of big ups and big downs, and unfortunately, the bads kind of outweighed the goods because, yeah, you scored a run, but that's an inning you want to get multiple runs, especially when the Nationals have pretty much everyone ready to go pitching except for Steven Strasburg, and that runs have been kind of scarce for the Cubs so far.
Yeah, and but I mean, let's look at the positives of it. Is the Cubs went down early 4-1. And I mean, I know for me, that was an early dagger for my heart. And the Cubs really didn't quit. They just kept coming and they just kept coming. And they took it to Max Scherzer when I think people without a lot of experience probably would have, started, I don't know, quitting almost. I mean, quitting's not is maybe too strong of a word, but
kind of being demoralized.
Yeah, when they're already down in a deciding game on the road, and you have their ace coming in to pitch in relief, and the Cubs didn't. They took Max Scherzer to the woodshed.
Right, and it's kind of one of those things where when he was coming in, normally when you see Max Scherzer coming in a game, you say, oh boy, here comes Max Scherzer. But when he came in, I said, well, he's on short rest and he's got hamstring issues, so let's see here. Gets the first 2 pretty quickly, and then just everything falls apart, and not all of it was his fault. A lot of it was misplays. A lot of it was bad luck. I mean, the first 2 hits that he gave up in that inning, it was an infield single and just a little blooper, little pop-up that dropped onto the grass. And, that's just kind of misfortune on the pitcher's part. And then Russell came up, hit that big screaming double down the line. So it was a combination of a lot of things. And then the defense fell apart. And that's when you got to that controversial call with the Baez strikeout.
Yeah. And there was a lot of controversy in the game. And I know certain Dodger beat writers took aim at the Cubs as far as that went, and but
don't even get me started on that.
But one thing you can give to Javi Baez is early in his, I mean, I guess he's still young, but very early in his career, he didn't always respect 90, and now he does. And you saw that on the drop third strike, is he respected 90 and he hustled that one out.
Yeah, he did. And you know what? Whether the umpire missed it or not, you got to give Javi Baez credit for not quitting on the play. You swung, you missed, you saw it got by, and you ran for the base. And the umpire flat out missed the call. He didn't see the bat come around. If you watch where his eyes were not on the catcher mask or the back of his head, so he didn't see the bat hit Matt Wieters. So it was just a flat out missed call there, but sometimes those things go your way, sometimes they don't.
Absolutely, and we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, when that was one of the few times when I don't know. I still think he pulled Hendricks too soon in that game. I know he was having some troubles getting outs, but as far as Kyle Hendricks goes, but still, Joe's leash on him is just so tight.
Well, do you know how many pitches he was at? 'Cause I don't remember. There were actually people shocked he went as far as he did, and I thought he was in an okay time because he pinch hit, or they didn't pinch hit for him, which people were surprised at, and he got 2 more innings out of it. So I thought that was okay. But do you remember how many pitches he was at the end? Because I honestly don't.
I didn't see the pitch count, but honestly, with him, because he doesn't throw that hard, pitch count is a little bit, I don't know. It's not as important with him because he just, he doesn't throw nearly as hard. So you're not gonna see the wear and tear on his arm like that, like you would with somebody like John Lester. So I don't know. I just felt like with how little he's trusting the bullpen, it's you didn't want to see him get pulled as early as he did, and then when you saw every guy come in there and fail him at some point or another from the bullpen, I was getting super nervous. I don't know about you.
Oh my goodness. You can't imagine how nervous I was on the couch. I was pacing around back and forth. And here's the thing. A lot of people say, why didn't Joe put this guy in? Why didn't Joe put this guy in? It was almost like he couldn't win. No matter what, the reliever came in and stunk. And what was most aggravating for me, I think it was the 6th inning, Pedro Strop gets the first 2 outs really quickly. Then he walks the corpse of Jason Worth. And then all of a sudden, it's a hit parade and the Nationals are rallying. It's like there were 2 men and nobody outs. And let's face it, this Cubs bullpen, every single walk ends up scoring with them. Every mistake they make, they pay for it.
Oh, it's absolutely true. And you, as much as we as fans, rightfully or wrongfully, criticize Joe about his use of the bullpen, the fact that he didn't put Justin Wilson in, I don't think anybody questioned that. Everyone went, "Oh yeah, don't pitch him, just leave him out there."
Yeah, exactly. No one was disagreeing with that. Everyone realized there was very little trust with him right now. What I thought was absolutely the correct move that people criticized at times, Wade Davis going the last,
7
was
outs.
it 7 outs? Yeah. I thought that was absolutely the right move because he had no other choice.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts were, at some point I was like, maybe he's got to bring in Lackey for at least a couple of outs to bridge to Wade Davis. And then at some point I was like, maybe he's saving John Lackey to pitch game 1 against the Dodgers. And I was like,
I think a lot of people were thinking that.
So I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to question it because somebody's got to be ready to pitch game 1. There is because
and it was going to be either Quintana or Lackey. And it was going to be one of those two.
And I mean, Quintana, after the game was over, I was like, I forgot how many pitches Quintana had, but he only went 2/3 of an inning, but it was a lot harder of a 2/3 of an inning than I thought it would be. Because
it was like 12 or 13 pitches.
Yeah, because he wasn't finding the plate. So, you just you're like, I just hope Q is not off for the game 1 or out of the rotation, because as much as John Lackey has been good the second half of the season, is against teams that just wallop home runs. That guy gave up a lot of home runs this year.
Yeah, he did. And you're coming in a spot you haven't come in over a decade. I mean, John Lackey's been a starter since 2002. And when you come in from the bullpen, even if you're a starter, they'll tell you it's a little different. Some guys can do it, some guys aren't as good, and it's kind of taking a big gamble there because you have a guy who hasn't experience coming in as a reliever and God knows how long in a winner-take-all game, which even more just told me that Wade Davis was the only option to get those last 7 outs. You didn't trust Justin Wilson, and then who else was left besides Lackey and Davis after that? I can't think of really anyone else. I think because everyone else was used up.
Yeah, they were the only 2 sitting out in the bullpen.
Right. So that's Joe had no other option, and luckily the balls and steel of Wade Davis pulled it out, even when he walked the first two guys in the 8th inning. When that happened, I said, okay, this is done. And then this, I think, was the biggest play of the game. Everyone talks about that pickoff, and obviously that was huge, ended the inning. But the biggest play of that game was Adam Lind coming in and grounding into a double play. That was the play of the game right there.
Oh, that was huge. That was huge. Wade Davis was not on typical Wade Davis level. As he was struggling, as everybody was. Nobody was finding the plate, and he grinded those 7 outs. I mean, that was a gutsy effort.
It was, and you kind of have to applaud him for, in my opinion, getting better as he went along, because the 9th inning was 1-2-3 and he got 2 strikeouts. So, he really, really grinded that out and kind of got some strength from it. And look, I know the Cubs won this game, and I know we should be happy and we should be saying a lot, but this might be the one Cubs playoff win that we may be saying more negative things than positive things, and that's just really weird. Because, I'm going to say it flat out, the Cubs were extremely lucky to win that series.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it was more the Nationals choking than the Cubs winning it. And honestly, is the Cubs, after they were down 4-1 in that game, they came back and had an 8-4 lead, an 8-4 lead, fairly late in that game. They should have been able to, at that point, coast to the victory, and had a full arsenal of pitchers to go for game 1. And they just did.
Right. Yeah, and look, how many runs did the Cubs score due to misplays by the Nationals? I mean, people say, oh, they haven't hit, but they did score 9 runs in the 5th game. Well, Jason Worth misjudged a fly ball. There was the bad throw. There was the hit by pitch. There was slow turning a double play. I'm not trying to take everything away from the Cubs here. I don't want to be that guy, but the Nationals really, really gave that up.
Yeah, I'm not trying to beat up the Cubs. It's not and say they're a bad team. It's because they're absolutely not. It's just the Nationals haven't figured out how to win yet. They're such a good team, and they haven't figured out how to win yet.
And they should have. You want me to be frank? They should have won that game. If they would have made a few more plays and gotten one more big hit, they would have easily won that game, because they had so many base runners. It was 14 hits and 9 walks. That's crazy. 9 walks.
Yeah, it was an ugly, ugly game. And it's funny because I came into work the next day exhausted and walking in like a zombie. And I had my Cubs hat on, and all these people were like, oh, that was a great game last night. And just for the sake of, I didn't want to start arguments in the elevator. I was just like, oh, yeah, it's totally great. I didn't want to argue and be like, that was a terribly ugly game, and I'm glad that we won, but it was an ugly game.
It was the 6th inning at 10:30 at night. It was the 6th inning only at 10:30.
True story is I have a Fitbit, and late in the game I started pacing, just absolutely pacing.
So did I. 2,200
steps.
Ooh, wow! Even kept track of it with the Fitbit. I like it.
Yeah, I went 22 because usually I wind I sit down for the end of the night. I'll just check it to see how many steps I've gone, and I did as I sat down and watched the game, and then I started pacing, and 2,200 more steps than I started with when I sat down on the couch, and I was like, man, maybe the Cubs aren't good for my heart or my emotions, but man, they're good for my cardiovascular levels, because I got all my steps in that day.
Got to exchange for something, right?
Yeah, something like that. But we didn't talk about it, is the rain delay for the second game in
Yes.
Chicago. I mean, I get the rain delay. It sucks that they couldn't have played that game earlier.
They could have played at 1.
They could have. CBS nixed it and said no, we don't want it at 1. And they would have got that game in that way. And
the Cubs would have faced Tanner Roark.
Yeah, and I think they could have just closed it out and everything would have been hunky dory. But they didn't. They had to play the next day, and Steven Strasburg wasn't going to pitch, and he got called out by everybody. And
Yeah.
and you know, Steven Strasburg's a couple years ago, I think we mentioned in the last episode, is he didn't pitch in the playoffs a couple years ago because he reached
The innings
his
limit.
innings limit and just no. So I think he's very strict on those things, and I think finally, you know, the media started beating him up. I believe it was David Ross said if a guy on his team did that, he wouldn't even be able to look him in the eye. And,
Yeah.
and that's a rough statement there. That's a rough ride.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of things going on with that, a lot of different theories. You know, they said that they treated him with antibiotics and IVs and that he was sick and whatnot. Here's the thing. When they said Tanner Roark was going the next day after the game was called, I said, tomorrow they're going to say he's fine and Strasburg's going to go. So I'm not saying that I don't believe that Strasburg was sick, because I think he obviously was not feeling well, but I do think it was kind of used a little bit of a bait and switch. I'll be completely honest.
Yeah, I don't doubt there was something going on, but I mean, I'm a pharmacist, and there's no way that he was so sick he couldn't go, and then they gave him antibiotics, and suddenly, in a couple of hours he was better.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. He finally, I think everybody pulled him aside and said, "Listen, we're a team. You need to go out there and pitch." And he saw things on Twitter. He heard what the media was saying. All of this got to him, and I think he just went out there and he pitched, and he
dominated.
Was really, really good.
Cubs did absolutely nothing against him. I mean, it was the ultimate revenge game, really.
Yeah, I mean, because he pitched great in Game 1. He just had a couple of bad at-bats and at the end of his run, and that was it. And, you know, the Cubs didn't need many to win that, or didn't give up any, so they didn't have to score any to win the game. And he came out and just dominated. He mowed down the Cubs.
Yeah, he did. And the whole thing that I was stricken with the whole time, from the rain delay to the start of Game 4 the next day, obviously a lot of people were talking about the whole mold thing and just the classic Dusty Baker excuse. And, you know, what I kind of said was, if Strasburg is really sick, then that kind of sucks for him. It's just the way that they handled the whole thing. The whole time you're thinking, mold, like what? You know, if he's deathly ill, tell us. Don't say, well, he's feeling under the weather kind of, and maybe it was the mold. It made the whole situation a whole lot weirder.
Leave it to Dusty to make a situation weird.
Right?
But I'm not going to lie, I did love seeing him, you know, throw his hands around in the dugout. It was awesome. I love watching him be upset.
Yeah, you know, in the moment, I was happy beating Dusty. I did kind of feel bad for him a little bit after the presser, because he just looked so down on himself. But yeah, I mean, it gave me flashbacks of when things went really south in like 04, 05, 06. And I'm like, I'm glad those days are over.
I mean, I don't think he's a bad manager per se, but that man carries a curse around with him.
He's snakebit. He's not a bad guy either. He seems like a very respectable, nice, down-to-earth kind of guy. not someone you dislike personally. I kind of wanted to talk to you about this, the whole Dusty Baker relationship thing. And where I come from with the whole Dusty Baker thing is he came as a messiah. We all know that. He came with an attitude that no Cubs manager had in 100 years, and that was, we're going to win now, let's face it. He kind of tried to break the whole lovable loser mentality. You commend him for that, but, the way things went down with him, it gets really bad when you look at 2004, the way that team crumbled at the end, and he lost complete control of his team. And that's when I think things really went south for him and his relationship with the Cub fans and the media. And, that's the thing that's going to stick to me with Dusty Baker was that season. Not 2003 quite as much, but that 2004 season. And, ever since then, it's like, I know Dusty's not a bad guy, but, you see him and you just, in this series, you're like, man, I want to beat him so bad.
Yeah, I absolutely don't hate Dusty at all. I know there's a lot of people that do. And I've lived through every second of his tenure with the Cubs. And I don't hate him, but I don't like him either. It's not on a personal level. It's he had the team that was going to break the curse, and part of the reason they didn't was his fault. And I'm far from even mostly his fault, but his part of it is just seeing the snake bittenness of him is it just makes me have a bad taste. And so I'd like to stick it to him when he came the skipper of the Nationals. I was like, all right, now that's the team to beat.
Right.
Make sure if we don't beat anybody else, we beat them. And I guess it's more of a hyper competitiveness with him, because I don't want to see him win with somebody else when he couldn't do it with the Cubs.
Yeah, it's like, here's how I see it. I wouldn't mind seeing him finally win it one day, but it would have been kind of a icky feeling if he would have won this year after beating the Cubs. I would see a little bit of like him looking at the Cubs in kind of a vengeful way after that, and that's just one narrative I didn't want to deal with. Let's just say that.
Absolutely. I just, it would be more bad taste in my mouth. And so I just, if the Cubs are going to lose, I just didn't want it to be to him.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to see them lose at all, but not to Dusty, not now.
Right.
Maybe in a few years, I'll give it up. But this year, after we just won the World Series, I didn't want him to be the one that took the crown.
Yeah, or have that kind of ironic thing of the rain delay saved us last year, and then it kind of screwed us this year.
Yeah. But moving forward is we had game one of the NLCS, and it was Quintana versus Clayton Kershaw. And honestly, Clayton Kershaw looked mortal.
He did.
He looked vulnerable.
He did.
And I don't know if it's the lingering health back issues that he's had, or if it's just being off for a week, just being a little rusty. But he looked mortal, and the Cubs just couldn't take advantage.
Well, it was really frustrating because they hit some hard balls for outs. That's what was really frustrating for me. And then after the Almora home run, Cubs bats didn't do anything.
Yeah, that was the frustrating part is, and if you watched every pitcher or every batter he faced, and they would show the scatter of balls, he clearly had a pattern for each hitter, and they just weren't sitting on the pitches, except Almora. Almora was sitting on that low inside pitch.
Oh, he
was waiting
crushed
for it,
that,
and he crushed it. and nobody else was. And I love Baez, and I don't want to take him out because some of the special things that he does on defense. But damn, if that man, if he could have some plate discipline. I know he's much better than he was the first time he came up, but
this postseason, though, he looks more like that 2014 Baez. Let me just say that.
Yeah, it's frustrating because, I mean, even the announcers, I think it was Ron Darling that said it was like, as soon as you get 2 strikes, they are not going to throw him anything over the plate.
Yeah, and you know, I'm just gonna say right now, the Cubs bats this postseason, it's not been pretty as a whole. Not just Baez. It just has not been very good.
Oh, the bullpen?
The bats, the hitting in general.
Oh, the bats?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh my
bats,
God! And the
yeah,
Cubs just squandered a huge scoring chance. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've got it on the I can't see it on my TV from here, but I've got it on the thing and online, and I'm just like, damn, the bats, they're not getting timely hitting at all.
Yeah, I finally snapped on Twitter. I just said that's pathetic. Bryant got 2 absolute hittable fastballs in that at bat, and he just swung right through them. No one is finding a groove here. It's just, it's frustrating. It's frustrating.
Yeah, and you know, last night Quintana pitched great until that last inning, and just hit. I don't know if he just hit a wall. If those few pitches that he threw in game 5 caught up to him, but you know, he just couldn't find the plate anymore.
Well, if you watched his approach, the 2 batters he walked, and I'm going to just say this right now before I get into this, Quintana was great last night, aside from that 1 inning. I thought he was very, very sharp, and that was a very good performance. He looked great.
Absolutely.
But those 2 batters, he did the same thing. He nibbled on the outside corner with the same pitch. Fastball away, fastball away, fastball away, fastball away, fastball away, fastball away. He's got a whole repertoire of a changeup, a curveball, occasional slider, and he likes to go inside that fastball. And I just thought it was weird how the 2 batters, he threw the same literal pitch like 14, 15 times in a row to those 2 batters, and they just weren't biting. Now, granted, one of those pitches was a strike to one of those batters, and it didn't get called. You know, okay, that's, you know, whatever, but he suddenly just only threw and nibbled that 1 corner for those 2 batters and walked him. I just thought that was very strange. The way he was mixing and locating throughout the whole game before, you know, it's unfortunate that 1 inning, those just 2-3 bad batters kind of cost him, because he was great last night overall.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then just the wheels came off because they were tied at that point. You're like, okay, Cubs just need to score a couple runs, hold them, and Rondon came in and stunk on ice. And you're like, I don't know, maybe we wish we did have Justin Wilson instead. You have Montgomery, who is normally extremely reliable.
What happened to him, man?
And he just forgot how to flat out pitch.
I mean, it's so painful to see. Great year overall for what he is. Got the final out of the World Series last year, but this year in the postseason, it's been a nightmare.
And in the season, he was great. I mean, the first half of the season, the Cubs bullpen was aces. They carried that team to as good as they were, because the Cubs bats weren't there, and the bullpen was great, and they've just slowly gotten worse. And now you've got a bullpen of, other than Wade Davis, is a bunch of people that Joe Madden doesn't trust.
And that's kind of problematic in this day and age of the postseason, when pitchers are being constantly taken in and out. The first sign of trouble with a starter, you take him out. That's just kind of how postseason ball is. And I think if you look at this postseason so far, we're an NLDS in where they really kind of pulled a rabbit out of their hat in Game 5, where they haven't hit the ball at all, and they're down 0-1 now and tied in a scoreless game in Game 2. I think, obviously, the biggest asset has been the starting pitching. Overall, it's been fantastic, but when everything else around you isn't working, like this bullpen, it's going to cause you problems.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't win the World Series without getting stellar bullpen work. Can't do it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right.
I mean, even if it's one guy who's pitching, last year, Jansen carried the Dodgers team, by how many outs that he recorded in a series, and what's his name from the Indians?
Andrew Miller.
Changed the whole. Andrew Miller, I was an old man moment. Andrew Miller, the way the incredible run he had through the playoffs last year, is even having one dynamic guy can boost you. But the Cubs, Wade Davis is no knocks against him, but he's getting up there in age. You can't expect him to go making 5, 6, 7 out saves on the regular.
Yeah, and especially since you have a bullpen that it's not like they go out there and they get hit hard. They're giving up free base runners, and you saw in that Game 5 when Wade Davis first came in, his command wasn't his usual Wade Davis command. So if he's walking batters, you're toast. And like I said, they really got out of there the skin of their teeth in that game, but you can't have that kind of thing again. You just can't.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about when C.J. Edwards gave up that home run against the Nationals, and we're like, well, why would you let him pitch to Bryce Harper? And if he has his command, no doubt, I have no problems with him pitching to Bryce Harper. But we all know that C.J. Edwards, when he's bad, it's because he can't find the plate. And Joe finally in a Game 5 against the Nationals said, I recognize that issue, and C.J. Edwards can't find the plate, and he yanked him quick. And it was nice to see, because I hate him giving such a long leash to C.J. Edwards. Because when C.J. Edwards, it's really easy to see he's either lights out or he's
It only
off
takes
the mark.
1 or 2 pitches to tell which one it is. When he was 2-0 to the first batter, you knew right away. I said, get him out of there. Don't even let him finish the at-bat. Get him out of there. And look, I'm a big fan of C.J. Edwards, and I think he's got a bright future, and he's shown some really promising stuff. But after the performance he had in Game 4, if you had Quintana warming up, you should have just brought him in a clean inning. I really think that putting Carl Edwards Jr. in that game was a mistake. And that, I think, is really the only big mistake Joe Madden made in that game. A lot of people, they criticize him for other things in that game, and, I don't necessarily agree that he screwed up in that game and those other aspects, but the one thing that I didn't like him doing was starting that inning with Edwards. I think if you're going to put in Quintana, you go in there with a clean inning. And especially since you don't know which Carl Edwards Jr. is going to show up, which it's okay to put him in that situation in a Game 1 or 2 of like an NLCS, but in a winner-take-all, risks are even riskier.
Oh, fully agree. And at least I got to give Joe credit, is he recognized really quick that Edwards didn't have it and yanked him quick.
At least he did that.
Yeah, and I'm not down on Edwards. I think he's got a bright future. He's got things he's got to work on though, and I don't know if it's fatigue, physical type things that when he's just off, or if he's got some sort of nagging injury, or if it's just mental. I don't know. But whatever the thing is, he's got to get over that, because the Cubs need him going forward.
They do, and obviously there's going to be some changes in the bullpen next year. They're going to make a few moves here or there, replace a few guys here, but Edwards is clearly part of their long-term plans, and though I'm confident he has the stuff to do it, they gotta keep working on it. That's just how it is.
Oh, nobody questions his stuff. He's got lights out stuff. It's just the command. That's his big issue. It's his Achilles heel.
Exactly. That's the whole thing. Now, going into this playoff series, I knew this bullpen could potentially be a big Achilles heel of this team. I think we all saw that coming. And we all knew that no matter what, this is who you got to ride with. Now,
yeah, it's not like not like you're gonna grab a Rob Z and throw him in the bullpen for the postseason. It's you have who you have, and guys just got to perform.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what it all comes down to, and that's why I think some of the Joe Madden criticism goes a little too far, because at the end of the day, your guy's got to perform, no matter what situation you put him in. I get it. There are times when he makes a move that we don't understand. I get it. There's probably times where he takes a guy out either too late or too early. I understand all that. But here's the thing. If those things end up working, then Joe Madden looks like a genius. But when they don't work, it makes him look even worse. And unfortunately, he's looked even worse because the bullpen has struggled. Let's face it, it has struggled in every game except game 1 of the NLDS.
Yeah, they have really struggled, and you don't even need to find the whole bullpen that's going to play well. You need to find probably at bare minimum, one other guy to get you to Wade Davis, but preferably 2. And you figured at least you could have Edwards and Mike Montgomery that could bridge you to Wade Davis, and from the starter to Wade Davis, and go from there, and then just roll the dice with anybody else that you need to pitch. But even those 2 guys are just not playing well, and it's just the wrong time for this to be happening. And I fully feel that the Cubs can beat the Dodgers, but they need the bats to somebody to step up at the plate, and they need somebody to step up in the bullpen.
Yeah, now, obviously, you're talking about setting up Wade Davis for the future. Here's one thing that absolutely has to happen, because he's going to be on the roster next year because he's under contract. You need Justin Wilson, the Tigers version of him, to show back up.
I'm in the long run, I'm not that worried about that. I think because we saw the stuff. We know it's there. It's, I think it's just a mental block. And you give him in the off season to work through whatever kinks he has, spring training to come in, and I think he's going to be fine. But it would be nice to have him pitching like the Tigers' Justin Wilson right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, right now where we're sitting, we've talked about how fortunate we were to win that playoff series because, they got a lot of good breaks in that series and they took advantage of said breaks, whether it was the bloop single in Game 3 or everything we talked about in Game 5. Going into this NLCS, I'm sitting here kind of listing the number of issues that have plagued this team so far in the postseason, despite moving past the NLDS. And, there have been a lot of glaring problems. The funny thing is, I'm sitting here kind of thinking, if we don't win, I'm not going to be terribly upset, considering what this team has done the past few years. And part of me thinks going into this NLCS that the Dodgers really had an upper hand in the series because of how gassed this pitching is. How much of the tank has been emptied from this pitching staff. And you know, it gives you kind of a different feeling than if this were last year.
Yeah, I mean, the Cubs really emptied the tank to win that last series, and it's nobody. They don't have anybody just stepping up and carrying the team on their back, a la Daniel Murphy with the Mets 2 years ago, where he just put the Mets team on his back and carried him. You don't have anybody like that. You don't have. I mean, the Cubs starting pitching has been phenomenal.
It's been great.
This whole run. You could not ask for any more, and the bullpen is not playing well. You just need somebody to come up and start hitting the baseball. And Chris Bryant is having bad at bats. Frankly, he's having bad at bats.
He's had a horrible postseason at the plate. There's no question about it. He's been great defensively, but offensively, he's been non-existent.
Yeah, I wish they would put Almora out there every game from now on, because I think he's swinging the bat better than everybody but Rizzo.
Yeah.
Zobrist at points he's looked okay, but he's looked flat out bad at some points. Baez is he's just not swinging the bat well at all. I guess Russell has been hit or miss.
He's had some big moments, but there hasn't been much consistency.
Yeah, I mean, Wilson Contreras and Anthony Rizzo are the only ones that are swinging the bat halfway decent that are playing regularly, and it just hasn't been. There's been nobody on base, or their hits haven't been as timely as you would like. So it's just somebody's got to step up and put up just awesome numbers for a series.
Yeah, and look, little disclaimer here. I hope our listeners realize that we're in the middle of Game 2, and we could be saying all this, and Chris Bryant might hit a game-winning grand slam tonight, or someone else may come up big, so keep that in mind. And with that in mind, I was going to ask you a little question here, and this is going to have to depend on the outcome of this game, so we'll create a scenario for both. Does that sound fair?
Absolutely fair.
Okay. Let's say the Cubs pull this game out and the series is 1-1 going to Wrigley Field. I would argue that winning this game is pretty essential to winning this series, even though it's a 7-game series. If this is the case, if we're going back to Wrigley Field, 1-1, you're feeling that something can kind of come together.
Yeah, okay, so it's if they leave Los Angeles 1-1, the Cubs have to feel like they have the advantage. They have to, because the Dodgers, just the numbers they've put up for the season, how great they've been at home, it has to, and how gassed you are. This has to be just the confidence booster. I don't think being down 0-2 is going to wreck this team, but I think coming home 1-1 is really going to be huge.
I agree.
The Cubs fan base is going to be, if the Cubs fan base, if they're 1-1, is going to be just, on fire. But if they're down 0-2, you're going to start sensing some nervous energy from fans.
Yeah, and obviously it would be a little different if this were last year and they didn't win, because if they came back to Wrigley Field 0-2, then there'd be a lot of nervousness. But anyway, let's go further in depth if we are indeed going home 0-2. Game 3, Kyle Hendricks on the mound. It almost feels like that is an elimination game. That Tuesday night's game is an elimination game.
It's like an elimination game without being technically an elimination game, because if you go down 3-0 to the Dodgers, they have lost that many games in a row, 4 games in a row, but I think it was only one stretch in the whole season when they lost 4 games in a row. So it's next to impossible to come out and come back from a 3-0 deficit.
Yeah, I mean, it was only done one.
Oh, and I guess I'm sorry. I guess it'd be 2-1, but that would still just, that would just still be a hard thing to come back from. I think that Dodgers team is too good, and you can't. You're gonna. Oh wait, no, sorry. I'm sorry.
If they go to Wrigley Field 0-2, and they absolutely have to win Game 3.
Yes, because you're not gonna beat them 4 in a row.
No.
So yeah, absolutely. That Hendricks is going to be carrying the whole season on his shoulders, and if he doesn't win, then it's a when, not if the Cubs lose.
Yeah, boy, and I think Hill just struck out the side, or he struck out at least 2. Not looking, bat's not looking too promising, and look, I really like Rich Hill, and I'm happy for him, but it is kind of frustrating watching him mow down the Cubs for the second time in the playoffs.
Oh, I know. It's like, it's infuriating. And it's not anything I'm angry at him. It's just the situation.
Yeah. I mean, it's too bad he didn't turn out with the Cubs. He had a lot of injury problems, and it was unfortunate, but I'll never forget watching that Game 3 of the NLDS in 2007. I was visiting my brother at U of I. We're sitting in a pizza shop as soon as the first pitch is thrown, and the first pitch was hit onto Waveland Avenue, if you remember that.
Yep.
And it was an ugly sight.
Yeah, and it's like one of those things is like, if you have like an ex-girlfriend, you're not rooting for her to be bad in life, but if she comes out and just is extraordinarily successful after that, and hits the gym and gets an awesome physique, and you're like, damn it, that's annoying.
There's a little bitterness.
Yeah, I think that's where it is with Rich Hill, but it is what it is, and when he's raking like this, I think the best thing you can do is just try to work the count and get him out of there. I mean, it sucks because the Dodgers have a great bullpen,
yep.
So it's but sometimes just a change of scenery is what you need.
Yep.
Different pitcher on the mound.
Exactly. And what I'm going to say overall about this series, and again, I know the people who are listening right now, that we are recording during Game 2. It's currently scoreless right now, and tomorrow when you're listening, or the next day after tomorrow before Game 3, whatever, it might be 1-1, it might be 0-2. I can never fully give up on this Cub team from winning, but the way things look right now, the way things are trending, the bats aren't getting any better, the bullpen is struggling and they just look completely out of gas. I mean, in general, other than the starting pitching, this team just looks like they're out of gas, and I really would not be surprised if the Cubs just do not win this series. I am not saying that they for sure will not win this series. This Cubs team has pulled off many miracles before. You never know what could happen, but losing this series at this point right now, the way they look, really wouldn't surprise me. And it wouldn't really be overly like, stupid loser Cubs. It's not like that anymore. We're blessed to be in the 3rd NLCS for the 3rd time in 3 years. I'm just saying, to me right now, it looks like it could very well be the end of the road. We never know, but a lot has to get better right now. No more wait till the bats come around. No more bullpen has to get better soon. It has to change now. Even if it's 1-1 or down 0-2, they need to find a groove here if they want to win this series, because the Dodgers are a really good team. And again, I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but I'm just expressing that.
And honestly, this is not to take anything. I mean, I'm going to make the assumption I think the Astros are going to win the AL. But this is not taking anything away from the Houston Astros. They're a good team, full of good players. I think whoever wins the National League wins the World Series.
Well, you'd either have a Dodger team that's really, really good or a Cubs team that now has a lot of experience and is still young and has that right drive to win. So, yeah, I could, I could see that.
Yeah, because if the Cubs come out and win this series, I don't see the Dodgers as a team that's going to fold. If the Cubs are going to win this series, they're going to have to rear up and take it from the Dodgers. It's not like the Nationals where you can let them falter a little bit and take advantage. The Dodgers are up for this, and they're at that cusp of they're ready to take that next step. So if the Cubs are going to win the series, they got to take it, and if they take it from the Dodgers, I think they're ready to play in the World Series. And I as good of a team as Houston is, I think this is going to be the NL's year still.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair prediction. It's we make predictions about baseball and things go completely south. Let's face it, baseball is such a strange sport. That's why you can't fully give up on the Cubs. But I also think it's fair to say that the Dodgers probably have a bit better of a chance to win with the way things are trending right now. But
well, I mean, to be fair, is look at the Indians versus the Yankees.
Can you believe they blew that series?
Yeah, I mean, you're up 2-0 in a best of 5, and they beat all of your best starters.
And you demoralized the Yankees by coming back from an 8-3 deficit in Game 2.
Yeah, I was completely looking forward to an Indians versus Astros ALCS.
Yeah.
I thought that was just going to be, and not taking anything away from the Yankees is because that team can hit, but they beat Corey Kluber like a rented mule.
Yeah, I mean, Didi Gregorius went off. They scored some runs really late. CC Sabathia had a really good start, even though things kind of went south for him in the, what was it, the 5th inning or the 6th inning? But up to that point, he was just dominating.
Yeah, and I mean, but that's the series that should show you is, a team can own you and have you on the brink, and you could just come back. You don't want to see that with the Cubs, but they've got to show life. They
right,
show
because in order to come back from being owned, you have to come back. You have to step up. This Cubs team can do it. Don't get me wrong. It's just I'm preparing myself for the worst, and I'm hopeful for the best. And no matter what happens, I'm going to be very happy about what this Cubs team ended up doing after, a mediocre first half and dominating the second half and winning the division and winning another playoff series. I mean, that's all great stuff. So, I'm not prepared to be all mad and doom and gloom and, everything about the Cubs sucks again. I'm prepared to gracefully accept the fact that, it's hard to repeat every year if they don't win. And if they do win, it's going to feel even sweeter knowing that they looked like dog crap when it came to hitting for a while, and if they step up and start hitting again, it's going to feel so good, but that's got to happen first.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I wanted to talk about with the Cubs is the play at the plate.
Oh, in last night's game. Yeah.
Thoughts?
Wilson Contreras had to slide across to catch the throw. If he would not have done that, the throw would have gotten by him. So what the hell is it for a rule to say you can't be in a certain position because of that? I think that rule is so arbitrary, causes way more confusion than there has to be at that kind of play, and there is just no clear-cut rule of it. It's like I said, it's so arbitrary, and that play did not cost the Cubs last night. They would have lost either way, so it had no direct effect on the outcome. But seeing that kind of thing happen with a rule like that it annoys me. It really does.
Yeah, it's a bad rule, and Joe Madden knows the rule, and I honestly think he went out there to argue, hoping that it would fire up the
I
team.
completely agree. The people criticizing him, oh, he's a crybaby. No, I think he did that to fire up his team. I absolutely agree.
And I see, following the letter of the rule, that's an out. Or I mean, it's not an out, it's safe, but damn, is that a dumb rule? That is a dumb rule. I get not wanting to have Buster Posey get hurt in a collision at the plate, but do we have to make dumb rules to that change a great play? That was a great play, and a dumb rule overturned a great play.
Here's what I said on Twitter last night. It's a rule of good intent, but it's not a good one. And it's not right to be mad at the call because it's technically following the rule. I'm mad at the rule existing. It's a dumb rule, but it's a rule, and by the loose definition of the rule, it was called the right way, even though the rule is bad. Don't be mad at the call, be mad at the rule.
It's basically the equivalent of the process of the catch from the NFL applied to MLB.
Yeah, it's like, it's so arbitrary. You don't know what it is or what it isn't. And coaches are like, well, do we challenge this? Do we not? Do we waste our time? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I thought it was a great play, dumb rule, and I completely get Joe going out there and arguing and getting thrown out. I almost wonder if he just said, "Hey, I'm going to argue till you throw me out, so you might as well throw me out," because he got tossed quick.
Yeah.
And unless there is, and I don't know, so somebody correct me here, is if you argue against a reviewed play, does that automatic toss out?
I don't.
If that's the case, maybe. But if it's not, then he got thrown real quick.
And you know what?
And he made sure to win and argue with every single official.
Yeah, and you know what? Let's face it. The game was pretty much already over by then. So I think it was kind of his way saying, might as well just get fired up in hopes for it carrying over to tomorrow. Because with Kenley Jansen coming in a multiple run deficit, that game was over.
Yeah, that play wasn't what called the game or caused the loss. That it wasn't that at all by any stretch. So I don't know. It was just one of those frustrating things in a frustrating night, in a frustrating postseason.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny how we're sitting here watching the defending world champion Cubs try to go on a second run in the third year in a row of being contenders, and you're watching this all unfold, and you're thinking, man, could you imagine if they didn't win this year and they were still looking for that first elusive one? Could you imagine the frustration that would have really boiled over with all this? Could you imagine how crazy we would have been going in Game 5 of the NLDS, or how much more pissed we would have been with a rain delay and having to face Strasburg instead of Tanner Roark? It puts so many things in perspective so far, and it's like, we want another one badly, obviously, but it's not going to have that tragic feel of not winning like before.
Yeah, I mean, the range of emotions would have been just absolutely crazy. I was pumped up after the Game 5 win because they won, and after all the emotion I spent pacing and worrying and biting my nails, it justified the means, but if they hadn't won it, then this would have just been a complete different range of emotions, and I would be in such a worse place right now after last night's loss.
Oh, me too.
But we have a win under our belt. You've seen this team come back from worse spots, but they've gotta. They just, a lot of people are like, well, they just need to turn the switch, and that magic switch in sports doesn't really exist.
No, it doesn't.
It's just an imaginary thing that you say when a team has talent and that they just finally start all clicking at the right time. It just doesn't exist. These guys are human. They just played a marathon of a season. There's going to be, sometimes when you're in a rut, you can't get out during the season. You have to take the off season to come back and figure things out. I think that's going to be the case with Kyle Schwarber. I understand the potential that he can have to just really change the game with a 500-foot home run, but I don't think you're really going to get that. I think you're going to get a lot of strikeouts and fly balls and ground balls into the shift. Maybe a guy like Chris Bryant will start hitting, but the most part is a lot of these guys, it's either going to be nagging injuries that they have to get well before they start playing better, or they are stuck in a mental rut and they need the offseason to regroup. And there's no switch to flip.
Yeah, I know. It's the switch doesn't exist. It's ideal, but it's not there. I mean, it's just kind of a fancy way for me saying score runs better, pitch bullpen better. Easier said than done, but it's that whole thing.
Yeah. So, at this point right now, and I'm gonna get the exact. We are about to start the 5th inning of this game. It's tied 0-0, and the Cubs are down 1-0. What's your prediction for the series?
If you're saying going into the series?
No. So this series the Cubs are in right now, they're down 1-0,
okay.
and we're. I'm just giving the exact point is we're 0-0 going into the 5th inning. So, at this point right now, what is your prediction for the series?
I know Cubs fans are going to hate me for saying this, but oh, wait a minute. Hold on. And Russell just gave the Cubs the lead. Okay, so let me change my thought a little bit here if we can somehow win this one. I think the series is going to end in 6 games, and if the Cubs win tonight, I think Cubs in 6. They don't, Dodgers in 5. Now, if I'm going to go off just right now, flat off right now, without any sort of outcome, I'd say Dodgers in 7. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt a little bit because of how good of a team they are. But, hey, Russell just gave them the lead with a solo home run, so let's hope that's a good trend for us.
I'm going Cubs in 7.
Okay.
I think they've figured out Clayton Kershaw a little bit, and he's with his injuries and such. He's come back down to earth a little bit, and the Cubs are gonna to be able to beat him next time, and I think Cubs in 7.
Okay. And again, I'm just. It's so hard for me to predict. It's so hard for me to predict, but, I'm just going to hope for the best from now on. Going into this series, with the way the pitching was so used up in that Game 5, I think that gave me a little bit more leeway to the Dodgers. If the Cubs were well rested coming into this, then I think they'd have quite a bigger advantage. But when you're kind of used up and gassed, it makes things a little difficult, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Let's quickly talk about the Blackhawks a little bit, and wrap this up with the Bears. They had a absolute lights out start to the season. came down to earth a little bit, but still playing very well, playing good hockey, and especially in this really, they've got a lot of games in a few days, and against a lot. I mean, they haven't faced a bad team yet, from Pittsburgh to Columbus to Toronto to Montreal to Minnesota to Nashville, and they only have one regulation loss in that stretch. So they beat Montreal 3-1. They had a bad loss to Minnesota 5-2, but I think that was pretty fluky. The team just sort of fell apart after a missed challenge. But they came back, bounced back, and were able to beat Nashville in overtime.
Yeah, I think not having Nick Schmaltz makes a lot of difference.
It really does. You're having to see them adjust lines, and just haven't had the offensive firepower without him. But I mean, the good news is Brandon Saad is playing great. That was a brilliant trade, and also Corey Crawford is just playing phenomenal.
That game against the Habs,
and you watch him play, and then you go onto Twitter and you'll see Meatballs just be like, well, Corey Crawford's only good because of the defense in front of him. And you just want to jump through Twitter and be like, have you ever watched a hockey game before? Corey Crawford is great. Corey Crawford is a great goalie.
If you're facing 35 plus shots, that means the defense is giving up a lot of shots.
And, not a knock on the defense, but it is a lot of young players, a lot of new faces, all new lines, and it doesn't matter who you put in front of him. Corey Crawford is phenomenal goalie, and I don't know what else to say.
What does he have to do? He's won 2 Stanley Cups. He's been to how many Western Conference Finals? 3. He's been in the playoffs every year. He started as a Blackhawk. He was really good last year. He's one of the reasons the Blackhawks pulled that season out of their ass, frankly, was him and Darling. What more does he have to do?
I don't know, but he doesn't have to prove anything to me, because that man is worth his weight in gold, and it sucks as far as salary cap goes that he makes so much money, but he is just worth it, because I don't know where the Blackhawks would be without a caliber goalie that he is. It lets you do so many more things. It lets you be a lot more aggressive offensively with your defensemen, because he's so solid.
And he's shown that he can stay consistent. It's not like he has one great stretch and then an awful stretch. He's shown consistency.
Yeah, but the only big concern so far for me is, one, you gotta keep guys healthy. Schmaltz gotta get healthy, and 2 is the Blackhawks still can't seem to solve that top line of the Predators. They skated so well against the Blackhawks and had a lot of good shots, and they can't solve that line.
Yeah, I didn't really see much of the game until overtime because of the Cubs last night, but that is what I hear. I knew they got outshot, and once again, Corey Crawford kind of held his own. But yeah, I mean, based on what I've heard, you're right, and I'm very, very, very certain that they're going to meet in the playoffs again, possibly even this year, but their playoff meeting days are certainly far from over, and that's something that the Blackhawks have to get better at doing again.
Yeah, and the good news is they've got this playing pretty much every other game or back-to-back games is winding to an end, at least for the foreseeable future. Is they've got they played last night. They don't play again until the 18th. Then they have a back-to-backer, get a game off, play Arizona, get 2 days off, Vegas 2 days off. So they got a few days off, and they're starting to face some lesser competition because they'll have the Golden Showers and the Coyotes. So, at least then they'll have them coming back down to earth as far as the level of competition.
Yeah, because they really had a rough schedule to start, like you said. It's playoff team after playoff team, quick team after quick team, physical team after physical team. It was getting a dose of everything that makes a hockey team good. And, so far the Hawks have found ways to win games. Every game except that Minnesota game, they've recorded at least a point in. So you'll take that, but if you get the competition easing up a little bit, you want to see them obviously continue to win games, and you get as many points as you can out of the gate because it's going to be a very competitive Western Conference, and there's a lot of good teams in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never know when Corey Crawford's going to get drunk and fall down the House of Blues stairs and miss a couple weeks. Any kind of thing like that where you're holding on and you want to get as many points as possible or right out of the gate, because this is another long season and it's a grinding season, and you want to be able to maintain while when there's trouble. You want to be able to maintain off of the position you put yourself in early.
Right, because that down the road you're going to have to meet up with these Western Conference divisional teams many, many more times. The Wild, the Blues, the Predators, and, obviously out of division teams you don't meet as much, but you play in a division with a lot of good competition, so it's going to be a long, grueling season, but take every point you can get.
Absolutely. And, honestly, it's don't want to talk a ton about hockey right now, just because the Cubs game's on and we're still in the playoffs, and we're just in the beginning of the infancy of the season, so we'll have a lot more to talk about in a couple of weeks. So might as well shift over to the Bears and the big win today.
Yeah, that was a game that gave me all sorts of headaches, but a lot of good things to look at too. Very, very bizarre.
Very bizarre game. One is after last week against the Vikings, when we were so down on our defense, we saw a lot of good things, and part of it against the Vikings was with nobody that understood, being the defensive play caller on the field, is they took advantage and they ran a lot and had a lot of gaps. This week, Danny Trevathan back after his 1-game suspension, and that center of that defense was, other than a couple of big runs, was pretty darn stout.
Yeah, I think the most impressive thing that I saw from this game as a whole was how that defense just worked as a unit. Both ends of the ball, whether it was secondary or it was the front seven, it seemed like everything clicked today.
Absolutely. And you saw Eddie Goldman playing really well. Akeem Hicks played well. Danny Trevathan played well. You saw Prince Amukamara play well. And honestly, my defensive player of the game, Kyle Fuller.
Beast.
Kyle Fuller played great. And I don't know if it was the Bears declining his 5th-year option on his rookie contract that sort of made him go, hey, this is real, I'm playing for a job, or if he's just healthy now and ready to play. Whatever the case may be, is he played great. And that interception for a touchdown that Amos had, that was if you go back and watch, that was all made by Kyle Fuller. He made a great play on the ball, knocked it away, and caused it to go flying right there for Adrian Amos, who was behind the play. He wasn't there in time, and the ball came right to him. And they, like in the Lovey days, is they went from defense to offense real quick.
Yeah, and you know what? What I saw from Fuller is what we've been wanting to see for a long time, and obviously you're seeing him now fully healthy. We haven't seen that in a while. You're seeing him quick. You're seeing him stay on his man. I mean, it was so awesome to see him generate that turnover when he tipped it, and then it went right to Adrian Amos. You're saying, not only have we been looking for Kyle Fuller to be really good, we're looking for this team to generate turnovers. And that's what they did. And it was amazing that Joe Flacco kept targeting his guys covered by Fuller because Fuller just kept causing problems for him.
Yeah, and the Bears linemen were getting to Flacco. May not have sacked him as many times as I want, but definitely collapsed the pocket. And he is, he's a statue kind of like Big Ben. He just stays in that pocket. But unlike Big Ben, Joe Flacco's not a hard guy to bring down. So they were able to cause some pressure and cause some errant throws. But, yeah, I mean, I think the defense as a whole played well. Excuse me. And it was funny because I was taking notes, and through the first half I was like, the Bears haven't done anything to shoot themselves in the foot. They've minimized penalties, no turnovers, playing strong defense, running the ball well. This is the recipe for winning a game, a road game against a tough team, a tough defensive team. And then the second half came, and it's like they wanted me to have to cross all that out because, you had Mitch Trubisky with the fumble, which I don't blame him. We'll get to this in a second, but he just had no time, got clobbered from behind. And you saw special teams gaff after special teams gaff.
That was one of the worst special teams games I've watched for the Bears in a while. I mean, both touchdowns scored by the Ravens were because of the special teams. I mean, the Bears' defense absolutely shut down their offense, but the special teams, they did more on two of those plays than they did all game offensively. I mean, it looked like a mess out there, and you say this over and over, play until the whistle. You play until the whistle.
Yeah, I mean, that second touchdown on the punt return, that was just abysmal. The first one, on the kick return, that I just think that's BS. I don't know why they didn't blow that whistle, because until they actually slowed it down and went to it, and I'm still iffy about it, is because the Bears player hit him, and then he fell into his own man who tackled him. And I don't know. I think that should be, considered a tackle.
Well, I agree with you there. I agree that was an error on that, but
but I don't understand why the refs wouldn't have blown the whistle, because that's 999 times out of 1,000 that's absolutely the guy's down. And they keep talking about they don't want injuries on special teams, so just letting a guy get up and have to keep running to the end zone and going, that's a recipe for getting somebody hurt, blindside hit, things like that. And I just don't understand why that whistle got blown.
Or didn't get blown. Lack thereof.
Or didn't get blown. Yeah, sorry. It's mind-boggling to me, because it should have, the instinct should have always been to blow the whistle when you see the man get hit by a defender and then go down. It just boggles my mind, and I would love to see Dean Blandino explain that to me. That's what I would love.
I know, it was very bizarre, and I was really confused because I thought they just wrapped him up and tackled him, and so did the announcers. I mean, yes, I would still argue you got to play until the whistle, but yeah, it was very bizarre, and I think that giving up the touchdown to tie the game late was much, much, much worse for a number of reasons. Number one, you were 3rd and 1. All you had to do was push forward and get a first down, and the game's over. It's the fact that was even set up was bad. Number two, it's not like you even had to make a bunch of fancy schmancy moves to avoid guys or slip tackles. It's like you had a clear lane the whole way.
Yeah, absolutely. So defense, special teams was bad. That was not good. And defensively, the Bears played great. But offensively, I understood the game plan they were going for. It was just a tough pill to swallow, especially when you're so excited about having this high draft pick rookie as your quarterback and didn't give him the opportunity. And I see why, because the Ravens have a good defense. They're a great secondary, and they can get after the quarterback. And we excuse me. And we saw that is on the outsides is Massey and Leno gave up so much pressure that it was every time that Mitchell Trubisky dropped back to pass is he had guys just barreling down on him. And sometimes it was unblocked guys. So it was a tough situation. So they wanted to keep pounding the ball and pounding the ball where they're successful. And Massey and Leno succeed at run blocking where they fail at pass blocking. So I get that. And you're trying to take the stress off of him and not get him sacked. And you had the starting wide receivers for the Bears were Trey McBride and Tanner Gentry, two guys who shouldn't be starters in the NFL, and both guys were starting their first game in the NFL.
Put this in perspective. There were a few plays where Mitch had plenty of time to throw, but he had to throw it away because no one got open. And also keep in mind that they were stacking the box against the run, and guys still couldn't get open. So that's kind of a problem.
Yeah, it's a big problem. And so I get this play calling because you want to establish the line of scrimmage and sort of wear those guys down so they don't just pin their ears back and go after your rookie quarterback. The numbers weren't great for Mitch Trubisky, but I honestly don't blame him. The completion percentage, he was like 8 of 16, but
not a lot of attempts.
Not a lot of attempts, and a lot of those attempts were just throwaways because there was nobody open and he was just running away from things. I'm starting to see a lot of people say, well, we could have not traded away those draft picks and had Deshaun Watson. And I think that's really unfair right now. Really unfair for a multitude of reasons. But number one is if clearly they haven't been watching the starts of Deshaun Watson, this is the same battle plan that the Texans ran with Deshaun Watson at the beginning of the season. He handed off, and then after every couple of series he would throw a pass. And you're seeing Deshaun Watson several weeks ahead of Mitch Trubisky because he's played several more weeks. Number two is nobody was saying Deshaun Watson was a bad quarterback when he was drafted. The reason people didn't want to take him at second is because of the completion percentage and the number of interceptions that he threw. That was where you didn't see that with Trubisky. That was the thing. Number three is look at the offensive line and the wide receivers that Deshaun Watson has versus what the Bears have.
Yeah.
That's another huge advantage he has.
Yes, and I keep
and
saying
number four is it's really, you can't judge a rookie quarterback on a third of a season. Is look at RG3 and Andrew Luck. Honestly, who is the best quarterback from that draft? It's probably Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
RG3 is out of the league. Our RG3 is out of the league, and people were saying that, I can't believe people drafted Andrew Luck ahead of that guy because he's phenomenal. And that guy is out of the league. And Kirk Cousins is about to get a mega contract.
I'm so sick of the whole Watson-Trubisky comparison. You're comparing two different quarterbacks in two different systems in two different situations. I mean, when people are like, look at Watson, he got away from a sack and Trubisky fumbled it. I'm like, well, okay. Watson also saw that sack coming while Trubisky was hit on his blind side. Okay, like the little nitpicky comparisons bother me so much. It does no good.
Yeah.
There's no good comes from it. Just focus on Trubisky. He's our guy. There's a lot of good things he's showing us. Just don't worry about Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, Mitch Trubisky has played 2 games in the NFL, and it's against 2 of the better defenses in the NFL. Deshaun Watson played against Cleveland.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I'm not taking anything away from Deshaun Watson. I never thought he was going to be an awful quarterback in the NFL. My worry was he would be a Jay Cutler type, where, he's gonna cost you a lot of interceptions, and we may see that at some point. Maybe he's figured it out since then. I don't know, but he's only a handful of games in the NFL. Let's talk in 3 years at that point and say, and we'll look at the teams around them, and we'll look at where these guys are and go, maybe we did make a mistake, or maybe we'll say, maybe everybody made a mistake, and really CJ Beathard is the best quarterback of the draft, or whatever.
Maybe both teams are happy with what they got. Maybe Trubisky turns out great, and Watson turns out great.
And I think that would be the best case scenario is both of these guys succeed. But I like a lot of the things I'm seeing from Mitch Trubisky. The Bears have to do some things to help him out. And
a lot of things.
And a big part of it is they don't have receivers that can get open.
No, I mean, you saw most of the production of his throwing is to his tight ends. I mean, yeah, Tariq Cohen threw the first touchdown, but both touchdown catches were by tight ends. I think, who was the leading receiver? Kendall Wright, and how many catches did he make? Only 2 or 3, from what I remember.
Yeah, and part of it was they didn't throw a lot because guys weren't open, or they got into situations where through penalties, holdings, what have you, is that they got themselves backed up. And that Ravens defense is a veteran defense for the most part. They're not going to get beat by screen passes, and they read screen pass all the way on several times.
Yeah.
And if you saw, Trubisky had to throw away screen passes because there was a guy on the screen man, and that was a smart play because how many times have we seen Jay Cutler throw an interception on a screen
Plenty
pass?
of times.
So it was a smart play, and it just sucks because, I'm just excited for a game when you can put him against a mediocre or a bad defense and let him have some success.
Right, because let's face it, we know that this style of football is not going to sustain you any type of winning. Just they're not in the greatest position, and though I do still wish he would have thrown a little more, I did think that they still did run a little too much, but that's just my opinion. Like you said, when we get to the point where we can do that, whether it's against a bad team or it's in the future when we're ready to contend, it's going to feel so much better. And I think that it's very frustrating at times that it seems like his talent is not being fully utilized, but, we're just going to have to be patient because no matter what we think or feel, the Bears are going to do what they're going to do, and you have to live with it. It frustrates the hell out of me at times, the way sometimes they call, but that's the reality of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've got next 3 opponents. We've got the Panthers, the Saints, and then we've got the bye week, then the Packers. And I think the second half of the season is when we're going to start seeing some marked improvement. That the Panthers game is a winnable game. It's a winnable game. Panthers, you're starting to see better play out of them, especially with Cam Newton playing better. But I think that's a winnable game. The Saints one's going to be harder because they've juggernaut offense, and then they're bad defense. So it's going to be nice because Trubisky's going to be able to do some things, but they're going to have to. I think establishing the run and moving the ball is going to be important because you want to keep Drew Brees off the field. And that Packers game is going to be a much different ball game because Brett Favre broke his collarbone.
Did you just say Brett Favre?
Did you Aaron Rodgers?
Just say
Aaron Rodgers.
Brett Favre?
I said Brett Favre. You know what? I'm just throwing Packer quarterbacks that kill the Bears, and Aaron Rodgers broke his collarbone, and he may miss the entire season.
I actually wanted to talk to you about that Aaron Rodgers injury.
The Brett Favre injury.
Yes, the Brett Favre injury. I didn't know he came out of retirement. What do you know?
The Aaron Favre injury?
Well, people say Brett Favre should come out of retirement now that Aaron Rodgers is hurt, but, there's a lot of speculation there. But, I kind of wanted to ask you about that and tell me realistically what you think the outcome for the Packers season will be. A, how long you might think he's going to be out, and B, is it, season ending for them?
Regular season ending. I mean, if he comes back, you gotta assume that he might be back for the last game, maybe second to last game. And I think they're assuming that they'll make the playoffs somehow, and they'll be played in the playoffs. But their backup quarterback is Brett Hundley. I think he sucks.
So do Packers fans.
I remember when he came out of the draft and people were like, "Oh, he's going to be the sleeper." And I watched him. I watched every single game of his entire senior season at UCLA to try to think what people saw in him, and I couldn't see it. I just threw my hands up, and I should pull the tape of my scouting report on him, but I couldn't see it, and I thought he was a terrible quarterback. And I remember it was the draft was in Chicago when he got drafted, and I was standing right. I think it was ESPN's coverage. One of the it was either ESPN or NFL Network's coverage. I was standing behind the crew while they were broadcasting, and when they announced they were talking about him just getting picked, and I was like, by the Packers. I was like, what do the Packers see in him? I don't understand. And they were like, oh, he sitting behind Aaron Rodgers is going to be great for him. He's going to be able to learn and then come in when he's ready, and it's going to be great. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to say this now. He's going to suck, and the day that you have to play him is you're going to be awfully pissed. And I think Packers fans agree with that after today.
Yeah, I have awful images of him coming to Soldier Field in a few weeks and just owning the Bears, but, nothing would surprise me anymore with the Bears. Now it's just the whole thing is if Aaron Rodgers truly is out for the season, then yeah, that's as big of a blow as you could get because, I mean, let's face it, Aaron Rodgers is why that team is good. It's because of Aaron Rodgers. Now, another thing to also consider is the NFC North isn't all that great right now. If the Vikings were fully healthy, then I'd say they could probably run away with that division, but their running back is hurt, and Sam Bradford and Case Keenum are kind of going back and forth with Sam Bradford's injury. So they're missing some key guys there, or key guys aren't 100%. And the Lions, I don't think they're as good as some people say they are. I think they have some talent and they're competitive, but people at the beginning of the year were saying, oh, watch them go like 12 plus win. Yeah, I don't see that. So I just, if there were a few clear-cut winners in this division outside Green Bay, then I'd say their season is kind of over. But the NFC North is, it's not that great right now.
No, I think we expected it to be 3 playoff-ready teams and the Bears stinking. But you're right, the Lions have way underperformed. I was expecting them to come out with a real strong showing, and they got robbed against Atlanta. They got smoked today. I forgot who the third loss was against, but they have not played that well. The Packers were playing well, but they, with Aaron Rodgers hurt, that's you have to, they're not going to come with those late come from behind games, and that offense, there's going to be no RELAX moments because it's going to be rough going scoring points for the rest of the season. And you're right, the Vikings have a very good defense, and they should have a pretty good offense, but with injuries and, just still question marks there, that you don't know what you're going to get. If I had to put money on it right now, I would assume the Vikings would win this division at this point, but it's not going to be anything pretty.
I keep thinking how the Packers pulled off that magic in 2013, and it would just, to me, I still have that feeling that Rodgers is going to come back late and he's going to lead this great, amazing comeback like they did and still make the playoffs. But it's just hard to know right now because if he's out for the entire season, then you have to rely on other guys to do that. And are the Packers going to go after another quarterback? Right now, it doesn't look like that's the case. It looks like they're sticking with Hundley. But, things can change down the road. They had Scott Tolzien in 2013. They eventually got Flynn back, and he won them a few games, setting up that division game that should have been won by the Bears, but didn't. And, there's just so much mystery in football. So it's an unfortunate situation for Green Bay, but I don't know how it's going to end up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking. It's with a broken collarbone. It said it's typically a 3-month injury.
Yeah, and
so that's 12 weeks, and we're in what, week 5, 6?
6.
Yeah, so if he makes that last 2 games, you'd have to be pretty impressed.
Well, yeah, because in 2013, that happened, what, week 2, week 3? It happened earlier.
Yeah, and so I just, honestly, I think this is more of a giving Packers fans some sort of hope than anything else, because this is not good. This is not good for them. And the first thing that one of the first people to other than news reports, one of the first people to tweet about it was Richard Sherman. I don't know if you saw his tweet, but he said something along the lines of, that he hopes he gets better quick because the league is better when Aaron Rodgers is playing.
Yeah.
And he took off, and I think a lot of people hate Richard Sherman, but I think he is. I mean, I haven't watched wrestling since I was a kid, but he's basically a heel. Like that's all a bravado, a put on to get reaction from people. And I think ultimately he's actually a pretty nice guy, and he took that mask off for a minute to be real.
He's very intelligent. He's a very smart guy, whether you like him on the field or not.
Yeah, and I think, he's recognized that he's going to make more money and be more popular as a villain than he is a good guy.
You know what? I think every league needs that kind of villain, and I think a lot of those villains, like in basketball, it's the guy in the Warriors, blanking on his name, kicked the guy. Green, yeah. It's like they kind of embrace being that villain because everyone knows deep down, every league kind of likes having that. They love to hate someone. It's what makes sports more emotionally fun.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Durant is trying to be a villain, but nobody hates him. They all hate LeBron. People like Kevin Durant, but it was much easier in my era of my heyday of watching the NBA when you had guys like Bill Laimbeer, and who you were just like, that's an actual villain. That's a bad guy. That's Cruella de Vil right there. And you had a Rick Mahorn, and you had these guys that they would fist fight you on the court. That was much easier. But there's a lot of bad dudes in the NFL, but most of them are bad people off the field, and you don't notice it in a violent game come forward. But Richard Sherman is, I think, a good guy that puts on that face to improve the league. The league is better, you're right, when there's somebody to root against, and he's fine putting that on and carrying that.
And he's right. When you see elite talent like this out of the NFL, it makes the product less enjoyable. We've lost Aaron Rodgers. We lost J.J. Watt. We've lost Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, think about that. We've lost 3 of the greatest players in football today within a span of a week or so. It's really unfortunate.
And Tom Brady has been on the injury report.
Really?
So, yeah. I'm not sad about it, but I'm just saying we're running out of guys here is to be the guy. But one guy that I want to hate, and I just really can't, and I was excited for him getting traded, was Adrian Peterson.
Yeah.
He got traded, and did you see what numbers he put up today with the Cardinals? I think it was 130 yards rushing. I still think he's got it. The Saints just didn't know how to deal with him.
It was not a good situation. The coaches didn't like to use him. It wasn't kind of his style of play. They're still kind of very reliant on Drew Brees and throwing. It wasn't the right fit for a player of his caliber, his style, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, Bears, it's just going to be a tough road going because you're not going to get guys healthy as far as the wide receivers go. You're not going to, I doubt you see a trade mid-season like this to bolster your roster. All you can do is hope that Trey McBride and Tanner Gentry start to build a better rapport and get a little better with the routes. That's all you can hope for. But you've seen some positive things with Mitch Trubisky, but it's going to be a rough ride if you can't protect him from the corners, and he doesn't have anybody to throw it to. It's going to be a long season.
And it's going to be irritating too, because you're going to see times like today where when he does get protection, he's going to be standing, waiting, and eventually have to throw it away because no one can get open.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see with this Carolina team if he's able to improve, and ultimately, I think it's going to be after the bye week when we see that next step up for him, and then we go from there.
Yeah, exactly. And I look forward to kind of seeing how it further develops. And, it's kind of nice, though it doesn't mean much, to get a win today. I mean, yeah, it was excruciating. And one last thing I wanted to talk about was I think the defining moment from Trubisky in this game had to be that throw to Kendall Wright in overtime.
Oh, that was huge. That was absolutely huge, and it was nice to see because, a lot of people will aren't as happy with Trubisky as they thought they would be, but honestly, with how bad that offensive line is, where we would be if we still had Mike Glennon in there. We're ahead of where we were, and we're giving
Definitely
Mitch Trubisky that experience. So that throw itself was the defining difference between a Mike Glennon and a Mitch Trubisky.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And that's kind of what I keep saying as I watch it. I say, a lot of these things that we're trying to make happen and that are happening are much different compared to Glennon and Trubisky. There's just a big difference. Even if the results aren't dramatically different, you see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one last thing I want to mention is it sort of sucks is we have 3 very good guards on this team and no centers. We've been worried about the center quarterback exchange from Mitch Trubisky's point where he's not going to be able to take it. When honestly, it's been Cody Whitehair that's been struggling with snapping the ball all season long. And I loved him coming out of college, and I thought he would ultimately be a tackle or a guard. I mean, he's clearly his blocking skills and his ability to play offensive line is not in question. It's snapping the ball is a problem. And
right.
If he's going to continue having problems, and you have Long and Sitton be healthy, I don't know if you consider next season moving him to another position, because I think he could play right tackle. I think he would have no problems.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, he's clearly got some talent on the line, but if snapping is going to be a problem, but you still see his potential, then I think it would do no harm to try to move him somewhere else. Because, let's face it, if you're going to be trying to compete soon with a franchise quarterback, you need someone who can make good snaps. Because late in that game, some of those snaps were ugly.
Absolutely. So, I mean, there's just a lot of room for improvement on the offense, and it's going to be, as you fix those other things, you're going to see improvement by Mitch Trubisky.
For sure. Now, here is one last question I have for you this evening regarding the Bears. What did you think of Jordan Howard and Terry Cohen? When Terry Cohen, I shouldn't say Jordan Howard, this was all Terry Cohen. What did you think of that trick play?
The one where he threw the touchdown?
Yeah, I thought that was really awesome.
I mean, it was a gutsy call. It was a good call. I mean, they've had some success with trick plays, and it's really sparked their offense and kept things going. I think it was a gutsy play just because you never know what's going to happen when you have a 5'6" rookie running back throwing a pass, but Zach Miller was open, so as long as you didn't underthrow that, there was not no risk of interception because that was either going to be caught or out of bounds. That's just the one thing Cohen had to understand is you can't underthrow that thing.
Yeah, and forget what I said about Jordan Howard. It was Cohen to Miller, right? It was Zach Miller who caught it, right? Okay, yeah, okay. Ignore the Jordan Howard part of that comment, but yeah, Cohen to Miller. Yeah, that was That was really fun. That was great to watch. I guess I should say this is the last question, but me personally, I thought that it was a really good throw that Trubisky had to Deion Sims in the end zone, and he was defended really well, and it was a very nice catch, but I thought that was a really, really good throw. Did you have any comments on that?
I mean, that's Mitch Trubisky. That's the one thing that was the selling point of making him the number 2 overall pick is he is an accurate thrower. You're not seeing the full extent of it because he's under duress pretty much every throw, and you don't have NFL caliber receivers on this team. But when he has these good throws, it's not a fluke, it's not a coincidence. Mitch Trubisky, and that was the defining thing of what separates him from a Deshaun Watson. Not a knock on Deshaun Watson, but Mitch Trubisky is just uber accurate, and when you see these nice throws, it's not a fluke, and this is what the Bears expect more and more and more and more going forward.
Yeah, that's why it's exciting.
It's very exciting. We see what the castaways that we've had have done. Brian Greasy and Cade McNown and Jay Cutler, and it was mediocre at best. And now we see somebody who we have really high hopes on, and it's up to the Bears to build a team around him. And I thought against the Vikings, Dow Logans didn't have a great game plan, but I feel this week he had a very, very good game plan, and it wasn't the one we wanted to see. It was the game plan we needed to see because he knew that we wouldn't be able to protect Mitchell Trubisky from that Ravens defense, and he felt he could run on them, and they did. Nothing else. That just spoke volumes as the huge run in overtime that helped win the game.
Yeah. Well said.
But yeah, if you don't have anything else, I guess this is going to do it for this episode.
Yeah, I'm pretty much done. It's the bottom or the top of the 7th, and it's 1-1, and the Bats aren't doing much. You just need one big inning is all you need. I know.
All right. Well, hopefully when we talk next, we'll be talking Cubs, on the verge of winning this series and getting ready for the World Series and another Bears victory. But that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swirsky Sports Talk Chicago. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you want to hit us up on social media, at ShyFanPat1, at Swirsky Sports, Facebook.com/Swirsky Sports, SwirskySports.com. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. Share with your friends. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her, you can have her, she's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears! Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.